WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by JW Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We Should Know is on the air. I want to thank you for being with us today. My name is JW Simmons. I'm your host. Our guest today is Dr. Jamie King. Dr. King, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The new superintendent of Sampson County Schools. I want to take a moment to just kind of briefly give a little background. You're a graduate of Appalachian State University. I found it was interesting. You have a double degree in biology and athletic training.
Yes.
Also, you got your master's from administration from the University of North Carolina in Greensboro and your doctorate in education from High Point University. The interesting thing also with me is that you've got a very interesting background in the sense in Guilford County, you had 11 schools there that you were kind of the regional assistant superintendent for. And I was just struck by 70,000 students, nearly 10,000 staff members. That's huge compared to where you sit right now.
It is massive. Really big district, right? One of the 47th largest districts in the nation, right? Just very, very different experiences there. I was a product of Guilford County Schools, so just a lot of background there. But it's nice to be in a place where it's small. I can get to know people and really feel like I can kind of make a difference in what we're doing.
It struck me as I was looking a bit into your background. Of course, you've got obviously you got a family, a wife. I say obviously. Sometimes folks say, well, everybody's got a family, but you literally are married, got 3 children, girls, and
girls.
In your bio, it's also indicated you got 3 dogs too. So is there a dog per girl, or is there just a mix here?
Yeah, just a mix. So had 3 dogs currently, had 4, 1 passed away recently, was older, but no, just a conglomerate of all of us, but definitely a girl dad, with 3 daughters, and then all of our dogs are also girls. I joke that my oldest daughter has fish. They are probably girls too. That, when God said, when there's a man in the house, I don't have to send another one. It's kind of how we joke around in our house about it. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting, and I want to kind of open the conversation today, is that when we look at the background of which we just briefly described in Guilford County, and then you look where you are now in Sampson County, much smaller, much more rural capacity. Why Sampson County? And key question, how hard was it to convince your family that we're moving from Guilford County, a mega metropolitan, to rural Sampson County?
Yeah, great question. So I think for me, although I grew up in Greensboro, I grew up in the country of Greensboro, right? So I grew up on 15 acres of land that my parents bought when my dad got out of the military. My dad is a retired police officer in Greensboro, so service is something that's really important. Grew up in Boy Scouts, Eagle Scout. So giving back has also been really ingrained in me of something. And so I think, for me, Sampson County was going home almost, right? It was going back to that community-centered, small town feel of we're all in this together. People hear me talk about a lot that one of my mottos is it takes all of us, right? And so I think that coming back to a place like Sampson to me means it takes all of us, because what you find is that every person is doing multiple jobs, right? And so our teachers here are more than just teachers, right? They're also school counselors for kids. They're mentors, right? They're helping prepare kids for where they're going to go. And so for me, coming back to kind of that small town feel was really important. And a place where I felt like the work doesn't get lost in the masses. Right? That I was at county commissioners meeting on Monday night, and someone walks up and says, hey, I'm one of your employees. Great, talk to me. Tell me what it is you want. What do we need to do? Where do we need to move? And so that's been really engaging and interesting to me, that people here want to have those conversations and want to talk about what's going on, and feeling that they also have a say and a part of kind of how we move forward. I'll say that, my family, my girls are like, yeah, Dad, let's go. They're ready to move today. My wife has a job in Greensboro, so she's not quite ready yet. She's a sign language interpreter. So again, it goes back to that whole family is giving back, and so they are very open. All my kids have come down here and spent some time with me kind of throughout the summer, since they're in summer as well. And that's been really nice. One, just have some one-on-one time with my kids, but also to have them come and experience and follow me and shadow me, come to the office for a little bit, so that people get to meet not just me, but also my kids and my family, because it is about the bigger collective group, not just me.
And it sounds like in reading a little bit about your background too, you're one of those folks, you and your family, you like the outdoors and hiking and doing all those kinds of things. So trust me, we've got that in this area.
Yeah, we always joke that our kids are not like the movie kids. During COVID was really tough for them because we lived out in the country. We lived on 2 acres, which I know is not much, but we didn't have a lot of neighbors. We weren't in a community, right? We were just on the side of the road. And I think COVID was that glaring thing that, wow, like our kids want to be outside. They want to be with other kids. They want to be playing. They want to be hiking, right? My middle daughter loves when I'm like, hey, let's go on a hike today, right? And right, we all pack up the car and just go on a hike for the day. And I think COVID helped us to learn that a little bit. I think, families, it's easy to get lost in the day-to-day of family, right? And the day-to-day of getting up and going to work and coming home and cooking dinner and then doing whatever the kids need. And I think COVID kind of laid bare that we forgot about family a little bit, right? And then we had to get back to, hey, let's just jump in the car and go for a drive, right? Like my middle daughter would say, Dad, let's go get lost today. Because let's just get in the car and just drive. Like there's no destination. We're going to go down different roads and see different things. And it's about experiencing life. And really it's about having conversations, right? Like, hey, my middle daughter's name is Boston. So I'll be like, hey, Boston, how's things going today? Right. And it just provides that kind of time that you can cut off the outside world and really get back to family and get back to what we all should be about, which is having conversations and growing and just listening to one another.
I want to pick up on a quote, a media quote that just kind of interesting to me, and it's something that I just thought I'd just give you a little opportunity to elaborate on. And this supposedly is a quote from you. You said, "Together we can create a collaborative network that supports our students beyond the walls of the classroom." That quote is interesting in the sense that it is obviously a great quote, but it has such depth. Tell us what your thoughts were when you made that statement.
Yeah, so education to me is very collaborative, and I don't think we think about it that way, right? When we think about education, we think about a teacher, and that's where most of our brains stop, right? To me, if we want to do education right, it's about a collaborative effort. I talk about communication versus conversations, right? Those are 2 very different things. And a lot of times in education, we communicate with people, right? It's a one-way street. We give parents information. We give students information. But how many times do we ask for it back, right? And to me, that's a conversation, which is very different than what we typically do, right? So we send report cards home with parents and students. We don't have a conversation, right? So when I talk about education, I talk about this collaborative environment where students, parents, business, community leaders are a part of what we're doing. Because I would argue that if all I'm doing is helping improve our graduation rate in Sampson County schools, but our kids have nowhere to work and have nothing to do when they graduate, then I've failed as the superintendent, because it's got to be about also what's next, right? And so that collaboration comes in there. When I talk about outside the 4 walls, I get really frustrated that we have these, right? So in Sampson County schools, we have 7,800 students that when they become juniors and seniors, they're still sitting in our 4 walls all day long. If we want to really prepare kids for college, if we want to prepare them for career, school isn't the place for that to happen, right? It's going out into our local community, going out into our local neighborhoods. I talk about our CTE programs are the places where we get kids engaged in what their future could be, right? And so a lot of times in high schools, right, we talk about marketing programs, right? Most high schools have marketing classes. Well, what those kids are marketing for is prom, homecoming, and yearbook. That's not preparing kids for the real world, right? Like, let's put those students at the Big Blue store, right? Intern for a couple weeks, and then they create an advertisement for that company, right? How many of our local businesses pay people to create advertising for them, pay people to create branding for them? Well, we have 7,800 kids that we could get to be doing that every year for free. But more than that, it's giving them these lifelong experiences. It's making them, when they leave Sampson County Schools and they go to college, or they go stay here and go to community college, or they go into the business world, they're taking with them skills and attributes that aren't from the textbook. They're from real world. And I think that's when I talk about tearing down the four walls of a building. That's what it is. It's getting our kids engaged in what's really happening, but also getting our community engaged in what's happening in the building. And I think there's a big disconnect there that we have to work together on, of how do we make sure these kids have that knowledge and skill base so that they can compete with, worldwide citizens.
So what I hear you saying is that these apprenticeships, if you will, could have not only an impact in their ability academically inside the school, but actually set a pathway for their future?
Yeah, I tell people, when we all went to college, many of us didn't end where we started, right? Like, I went in, I was gonna be a marine biologist, right? Ended up totally different path. But if kids are exposed to that before they ever cross the threshold of the college, what can we save, right? I'll talk about what can we save in financial freedom for that family. Right? We know that most students who go to college now is a 5.5 year. It's not 4 years anymore. Well, that's money, right? That's a lot of money that families are burdening themselves with. I would argue that we, as the K-12 education, also have a part in that, to make sure that when our students leave us, they have some good quality paths that they're going to follow. They know, right? They've interned, right? Every kid at some point wants to be a doctor or a lawyer, right? Well, let's move beyond that, right? What else is there? Or if they want to be a doctor and lawyer, have they interned at all at a doctor's office? Because it's not all the fun surgeries that you see on TV, right? There's a lot of paperwork to that. So do they see all of those pieces before they ever start taking classes in it, to make sure that that's truly what they want to do? Now, I also think kids should have choices, right? And so you can't get so defined in that one choice that you forget about everything else that's out there.
I want to follow up on some of those thoughts. We're going to take a quick break and come right back. But there's so many things and challenges, should I say, that the leadership role that you have and those folks that work directly for you, I want to touch on some of those when we come back and kind of get a little more, understanding of what your possibilities are here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us, and stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment with Dr. Jamie King, Sampson County Schools.
Providing fewer commutes, more backyard offices, and crystal clear meetings. Providing less, you froze up, and more presence in your presentations. Providing a better internet experience. Providing possible.
You don't have to move to have the home of the future. Star Communications is now offering all-in-one security and home control systems from Honeywell. Control lights, thermostat, locks, and your alarm all from one touchscreen or a tablet or smartphone. With Total Connect, you control your security system, home automation functions, and view live security video on your phone from anywhere. Sign up before August 31st and receive free basic installation, a savings of over $100. This is a limited time offer, so call now. Most aging adults want to stay in their homes as long as possible. And as your loved ones get older, you want to support them, even when you can't be there. Star is proud to offer Star Alert. This new system is now mobile and has GPS compatibility, so your loved ones can live their lives and you can have peace of mind, knowing they can get the help they need with just the simple push of a button. The new Star Alert also offers automatic fall detection, so help will be alerted even if they can't press the button. Call and ask about Star Alert today.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. My name is JW Simmons. The name of the show is We Should Know. We're talking today with an educator that's been in education for 20 plus years. Now here he is in Sampson County. He's the superintendent of Sampson County Schools, Dr. Jamie King. Dr. King, thank you for the opportunity for us to talk to you and maybe help you get your message out into the community as not only your expectations, but what you hope to do collaboratively. And that word collaboration is something that you just talked about a bit. I want to kind of follow that thread, if you will, and let you kind of elaborate for us on what you hope to accomplish with helping folks understand that child what the expectation is you have for parents, for the guardianship of those children. When they enter the school system in those short hours that teachers have, it's just an unfolding dynamic that I find interesting to get people, particularly in your positions, observations on.
Yeah. So I think that we've worked really hard to create what's called the portrait of a graduate, which is the end result, right? So when kids leave us, the portrait of a graduate should be, what do students leave us knowing, right? What concepts and skills do they have? Kind of that all-encompassing. But what we don't do is what you're kind of alluding to now is front-loading that with parents, right? Here's what you should expect us to give your child. Here's what we need you to help in. I think that goes back to the collaboration that you mentioned, right? In creating these environments where the school is felt as a safe place. I think a lot of our families and communities don't feel that school's the place that they can go and have those conversations, right? That they can go and speak to administration or teachers to say, hey, here's what we're struggling with. Here's what my child's struggling with, right? It's seen very as a disconnect between schools and families. And we've got to get back to the place where the school is the center, right? The school is kind of both the center of the community, but also the center of the family. I tell my team all the time, it takes a village to raise a child. And that means that as educators, we're part of that village. But we also have to have parents be part of that village with us. And so that means, parents understanding that sometimes you got to call us and tell us, hey, Jamie's having a rough time right now, right? Jamie's dog died recently, right? Like schools have to know what's going on with kids to ever be able to educate students. And I think in the massness of just education, we've forgotten about the individuality. We've forgotten to have conversations with one another. I also talk about parent engagement looks very different than it did when we went to school, right? It's not just parents showing up for open houses, right? What I hear from most teachers and school administrators is, well, parents don't care anymore, right? We had an open house and only 10 parents showed up. My rebuttal to that is always, did the kid come to school? Did the kid have their teeth brushed, hair brushed? Were they wearing clean clothes? Were they fed? Did they do their homework? Because that means somebody at home, somebody is caring about that child. Kids don't just wake up and take a shower because they want to, at least not younger kids. High school kids, yes. And so involving the parents in that, understanding as educators that, some parents have to work 2 and 3 jobs and they're not going to show up to open house. They're not going to show up to get a report card. Some parents are having to choose, if I go to school, that's going to cost me $7 in gas money to drive to school and back, or I could pay for dinner tonight, right? And so we have to understand the community in which our kids are coming to us and the struggles that some of our families deal with and how we help them with that and how we help the conversation and how we help the communication. I just think it's important that we frame that for educators in the right sense, but then also are including parents in that conversation along the way.
How has technology changed our students, the expectations of our students, the learning process for our students, in both a positive and negative way?
Yeah, I mean, it's completely different, right? So when we think of, when we all went to school, this was the size of a classroom, right? The computing power that our cell phone had was in a whole room, and now it's in the palm of our hands. And I think that we forget that we then have to change because of that, right? So when we tell students, you can't Google that. Well, you can, right? If I ask you a question, I bet the first thing most of us do is Google the answer, right? Because we want to learn. And so I think many times in education, we look at it as a wall and a burden. And I kind of compare it to artificial intelligence and ChatGPT. Well, why aren't we teaching kids how to use that appropriately and in the right way and understand that, yes, it's not always factual. You have to learn how to kind of divvy through and pick things. But ChatGPT is to me the same as Google. If we didn't teach Google 10 years ago when Google was introduced, and educators around the world were like, oh my God, this new Google thing, right? You can just type a question in and it'll answer, right? I remember Mr. Bing was the original one, I think, before Google came out. But now that's how we all work. ChatGPT is going to be the same thing, right? Like we have to educate kids on how to use it appropriately, how to get things out of it that are needed, but also it's not taking the place of other things. And so I think we failed to do that. We failed to educate kids on the proper use of technology in your daily interactions, right? We talk about code switching a lot and how as students, you can have a conversation with a colleague or a friend one way, But that's not how you have a conversation with an adult, right? That's not how you have a conversation with your supervisor or your boss. I think technology is the same way. I think where it is different is that a lot of people in education, especially veteran teachers and veteran staff members, aren't as ingrained in the technology. So they're afraid to have some conversations with kids and students about the proper uses because maybe they don't know the proper uses themselves, or just don't equate it. But I think that technology can truly change the face of education if we use it in the right way. What I would argue is it's not a one size fits all though, right? So what I don't believe in is just handing kids a device and having them run off into the corners and go do their work, right? They're kids for a reason. That part of their brain hasn't developed yet. We have to help develop that part of their brain in intelligence, knowledge, and keeping that material in their brain. But it is a tool that teachers should use in their classrooms to differentiate instruction, or for small groups, or to pull in concepts that's the best way to teach them. We have classroom sets of 3D goggles now, right? So our kids can go hike Mount Kilimanjaro if they want to. Now, is it the same? No, right? You don't have the frigid temperature. You're not carrying a backpack. But could they see some of the things that explorers see when they go hiking? Of course. And I think that we got to figure out how to embed those, but that's not the only tool. It's one of many tools that educators have that they can use in their classrooms.
It's interesting, and you mentioned alternative technology. I wanted to kind of follow that thread a little bit. When we look at AI and the impact, most of the folks in the industry now say we're just at the kind of the brink of AI. The possibilities are extreme. Do you feel like we have educated the educators enough to understand applications, future potential, and the connectivity of making that work in a realistic education process?
Yeah, not at all. Simple answer there. I think we get very scared in education of new things. And so when educators see ChatGPT, for example, the first thing they do is block it. Nope, we got to block it. Kids can't have access to it. Well, if our kids are going into the world in which ChatGPT is the new thing, right? It's what everybody's talking about when you talk about technology, is this artificial intelligence. If we're not educating students, how do we ever expect them to learn about it, right? And if we don't educate ourselves about it, how do we ever expect to educate students about it? And so I think we in education have this fear of the unknown, the fear that, well, these artificial intelligence are going to take the jobs of teachers. No, that's not what we're saying. But I bet there's some really interesting ways we could use that to teach concepts and skills much better than how we're teaching it today, right? And so harnessing that power, understanding that it has limitations, right? Educating students on what those resources are. But what we can't do is just block it, right? And pretend that it doesn't exist, because then our kids are getting information the wrong way, right? Because they're not learning it from educated people who have studied and learned. They're Googling it, right? And just trying to find the randomness of it. Where I think we as educators have this expectation that we should be prepared for it. We should answer questions with students about it, and we should prepare them for how to use these tools the best way. Because I agree, I think we're only on the cusp of AI and what it will do. And in 10 years, you're going to be talking to somebody else who may not even be sitting here, who's a hologram, right? I mean, that's real big scientific, but I think that we have to prepare kids for that world that is very different than the world that we're sitting in now.
Is that something that we should look at from technology advancement to allow students to have the capacity of, for example, tablets and so forth, that because every child can't afford a tablet, especially, I mean, as you know, particularly in some of the areas that are challenged financially, should that be part of the school expectation, just like we have backpack buddies? Should we be packing a tablet in there as well?
I think we should. Right. So, Sampson County Schools, we're a 1-to-1 district. So all of our students have a technology device. K2, it's iPads, 3 through 12, it's laptops. But I would argue it's what we do with them. Right. And so it's not just about giving the device, but what are we doing with the device? And what I see a lot of times is we've jumped and made this huge move to 1-to-1 to give everybody a device. But most teachers are teaching the exact same way they did before they ever had the device. So what's the purpose of the device? Right? If we're going to teach, if you're just going to make copies of worksheets, but now you're just going to post it online for a kid to download, you're saving a tree, but you're not changing how you teach. All you did was just take your worksheet and digitized it, right? And so I think that there's some great models out there that talk about, right, how do you actually substitute the device for the worksheet, right? What online materials can you give that are a completely different way for kids to answer the questions rather than just an electronic worksheet, right? How do you right? So one of the things is reinvent. How do you reinvent the assignment with technology rather than just substitute it? And I think we have to get to that place where we're educating teachers about how to use the resources. I think right now we just give resources, but we don't really spend the time to prepare and educate teachers on how to use that resource effectively. When you also talk about devices, I would argue it also goes back to internet connectivity at home, right? I think that's something that as a community, as a system, we need to pay attention to, because simply giving a device to a kid who has no internet access at home doesn't help him at all. So how do we also then ensure there's connectivity solutions?
Absolutely. And we're going to take another break. Yeah, time goes by fast on this show. But this whole idea, maybe we can spend some more time if we have it on that, this whole idea of adjusting methodology to the technology, which you and I both agree is pretty important. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking with Dr. Jamie King, Superintendent of Sampson County Schools, and some of his ideas on education, where we're going. We'll be back in a moment.
Eastern North Carolina is a beautiful place where we gladly choose to call home, and we strive to provide the best communications services. STAR is committed to improving communications to all our service areas because we want to improve the communities where we not only work, but also live. STAR Communications. We are neighbors serving neighbors.
If you run a business, you need sales. To get sales, you need customers. To get customers, you need exposure. Let our team of experts craft and produce the perfect video ad to reach your intended audience while making the most of your advertising dollars. Call 1-800-706-6538 or visit starcom.net to contact our STAR Communications production team and get your business moving to the next level.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. JW Simmons here, your host. The name of the show is We Should Know. Today is about education, school opening up, 23-24 school year right here in the area, Sampson County. Dr. Jamie King, new to the area, but definitely not new to education. Been in this business for 20 years plus. Excellent credentials, background. We're pleased to have you in the community. I want to touch on just some conversation from you to the folks that teach in the classroom, that keeps the schools going, that drives the school buses, that makes sure the lunchrooms going. You're looking at close to 1,000 people that are your staff people. I want to kind of get your feeling for those people. I also want to kind of do it in a threefold way. Speak to the folks that are family members, some of the people that we talked about, the guardians, the parents, those kind of things. And then I'll just give you an opportunity to speak to the students too in kind of a broad brush way, or any specifics you want to. Let's start with all of those folks that, as you know, are critical and keep the schools going.
Yeah, so I think I'd start there with students, right? Anytime I can talk to students, I like to remind them that you are in charge, right? Like, this is your school building. This is your place that you come every day. We want you to be a part of that. And so that means that you got to help us a little bit, right? You got to follow some rules, which are basic rules. But really, I would challenge all of our students to think bigger, right? What do you want out of your school? What do you want out of your teachers? And the thing that I've challenged my staff with is listen. We have this saying in my household, don't wait to talk, listen. Those are two very different things. And my youngest daughter likes to wait to talk. So we have this conversation very regularly in our house. But to students, listen. Listen to your teachers, listen to your administrators, listen to your parents. You know, I believe that all of us want you to be better. That's why we're all here. You know, educators, we can get tired sometimes, but everybody wants you to be a better student, wants you to be a better citizen. You know, so I would say to students, take that ownership, right? Take that next step. Make your school your school. You know, if there's faults in your school, go to your teacher, go to your administrator. You know, I believe that principals want to run the best school that they can, but they can't do it alone, right? And so having a school that has 400 kids in it, but you never hear from the kids about what they want and need it makes it really difficult to lead. And so I would tell students, speak up, right? Be your voice, talk. Now there's rights and wrong ways to do it, right? Like anything. But I think that our leaders in our district want to hear from you. You know, to our teachers, I would say the same thing, right? Listen to kids, because kids will tell you, kids are honest. One thing I love about education, right? Kids will tell you what's happening. You know, I went to summer camp a few weeks ago and we're talking to kids in the lunchroom. Hey, what's going great? What's good, right? I mean, they tell you honestly, whether you want to hear it or not. And so I would say to staff, take some time to listen to kids, right? Take a pause every now and then now, right? Also say, this is not daycare, right? We are here to educate kids, so it can't just feel good. It also has to be good. But take some time and listen, and don't just wait to talk. Listen to kids, listen to their hopes and dreams. I think too many times, especially in the high school level, we're so busy. We have so much stuff to do that we don't just pause and listen and call kids into your office and listen and have them talk about what are their experiences like. If they were principal for a day, what would they change? If they were a teacher for a day, what would they change? Right. So again, along that same thing of listening to our school administrators and staff, you know, I think be bold, be courageous. I've told my team, I want you to fight me, right? Like I want you to push back on me sometimes because I need that to grow and our kids need that because our kids deserve the very best. And no one's keeping their best at home, right? No one's not sending their best. So we all got to meet that. And we can't always point fingers at kids are going to do what we expect of them. And if we expect kids to come to school and give 80%, then that's what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. But if we have conversations with students and with families and we build a culture where school is of vital importance and school is your best, then that's what's going to happen because I believe that kids and families and communities will raise to the expectations that we set. But I think too many times in education, we set the bar low instead of setting it high. And I think that our kids can do so much better and should get so much better than what we're giving them, but it's going to take a little effort from all of us working together to make sure we do that in the right way.
What would you say to parents today from the new superintendent?
Yeah, I would say, you know, reach out to us, have conversations with us, show up when you can, but call us when you can't, right? I promise you as a parent, if you called a principal and said, hey, I know you have open house tomorrow night, but I can't come, like that principal or that teacher would be like, oh my God, right? Susan's mom just called me and said this, like that would spread like wildfire, right? Also say, be positive. You know, I think as educators, it's a tough job. It is mentally exhausting to be an educator, but it's so rewarding. But also know that for the most part, we have the best intentions, right? Like teachers aren't showing up because they want to do a disservice or disjustice to your child. So understand that that's where they're coming from. Understand that as teachers, they have, you know, 120 kids maybe that they're teaching in a day. So also understand that grace, understand that, you know, that teachers mess up, I mess up, we all are going to make mistakes sometimes, and that our intentions are in the right spot. And so, you know, sometimes it's got to be a two-way street. It's got to be a conversation with a parent and a teacher, a conversation with a parent, student, and the teacher, conversation with just the school. And so include us, make sure that we're a part of that. If there's stuff that your child's struggling with, let us know, right? And we're not trying to be nosy. We want to help, right? We want to have our hands in because ultimately the success of your child is also our success. And so parents understanding that we're in this with you, like we are hand-holding with you through this process of educating your child, but we need you to be a part of that with us too.
In today's education world, for decades, there's been organizations referred to as PTAs and PTOs. Mm-hmm. Are these parent-teacher association, parent-teacher organizations, do they still have relevance today? And what's your thoughts on the enhancement of those, or how do you see that process? Is it still something needed in the community?
It's very much needed. I would argue, this is another saying, is that we're doing a lot of check boxes, right? So we have PTAs and PTOs at schools, but it's just a checkbox, right? It's just saying that we have it, but what are they doing, right? And so I would ask like school administrators, when was the last time you had a luncheon or a breakfast with your PTA and you didn't bring an agenda? You let them bring an agenda to mm-hmm. you. Right? Because to me, that's conversation and communication, right? Two different ways. And a lot of times we're giving communication to parents, but we're not asking for their input back. And that takes some humility, right? I mean, it takes you taking your hat off and being like, okay, I'm willing to listen. Because parents live it and breathe it every day, right? Like I know from my own kids, when they come home from school and tell me about their day, I'm like, oh, what happened, right? Like, because I got to take a breath. But understanding that parents have just as much at stake as we do, right? If not more. It's their babies, it's their kids, it's their livelihood. But listening to them, opening the door for the conversation, right? And I think too many times we're scared of what someone's going to say. What
you say to parents today from the new superintendent?
Yeah, I would say ingrained in that community. If you are a teacher, if you're an administrator, and this is what you're about, then you know what they're going to tell you. So now listen, right? Listen to the whys behind the story. So I think that's really important. So yes, I think they have a role. Sorry, I got off topic there. I think they have a role. I think we're not using them effectively though, right? We're using them to fundraise.
So what I hear you saying is if they're there, they need to be empowered and connected and become more of the advocacy piece for that school.
Yeah, I talked to, as I've kind of done a listening and learning tour around the district, and I've visited all of our 18 schools and met with principals. What I've heard a lot from them, right, is there's these parents that show up an hour or two before school gets out and just wait in the parking lot to pick up their child. Mm-hmm. And so my answer to every one of those principals is, have you invited them in? Right? Have you gone and knocked on the car door and been like, hey, I notice you're here every day from 2 to 2:50 waiting for your child to get out of school.
That's right.
Do you want to come inside and help us with, right? Even if it's sorting paper, right? There's so many things that can be done in schools, but what we say to people is, well, just come and help. Well, parents don't know how to come and help, right? Like they're doing what they can. And I would argue that most of those parents who are sitting in the parking lot waiting to pick up their kid would gladly come in the building and help, but they don't know what to do. They don't know how to do it. And so as the education leaders, as school personnel, we got to extend that olive branch. We have to walk out there and knock on car doors and say, hey, I noticed you're out here 3 days a week. Would you mind coming inside and helping us, right? Like extend that olive branch, open the door, have conversations with people, because you'll be interested to see what they tell you too, right? And what some of those parents who are sitting there might be a teacher who wants to be a substitute teacher, but doesn't know how to do it. Right, you just open up the doors to so many more conversations.
And what I'm hearing you say, and just for clarification point, is that if parents out there have input or they have some ideas that you and your office and principals and through whatever process, you're open to those ideas to bring some positive change. And I only picked out the PTA, PTO history as being part of that cumulative kind of input from parents and others directly to the school system.
Yeah, I mean, so I talk about lenses, right? I see things through my lens, right? And my experiences, but I'm not the 8,000 students that we have. They all have a different lens than I do, right? Their parents have different lenses. And so to me, it's really important to hear from the people who have a different lens, people who have a different experience, right? To hear from parents who school isn't their happy place. Right? Like when they went to school, they stayed in the principal's office for bad reasons, not for good reasons, right? Well, their experience, and when we talk to them about coming to school, they have a very different experience of what school is than if they loved school, right? And so understanding that, everybody's perception is their reality. And it may not be the real reality, but is their own reality. And so I think by understanding different people's realities, it allows us to know what the real story is. Because when you put all of those people's lenses together, that's the truth. That's what's really happening. And I just think that too many times we cut those off and don't listen to all of those stories.
We're going to take another break. When we come back, we'll be kind of in that last segment. I'm hoping that we can wrap up a semester of information here. As you know, and I know, we could talk about this for probably another 8-10 hours and still not cover everything. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment with Dr. Jamie King, new to Sampson County, but not new to education. We'll be back in a moment.
For the ultimate Wi-Fi experience, you need whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Star's whole home Wi-Fi provides ultimate coverage, ultimate performance, and ultimate power all the time. Star's whole home Wi-Fi systems feature the latest Wi-Fi 6 technology and are equipped with unrivaled bandwidth and 4 times more simultaneous connections. So you can connect tons of devices throughout your home with no lag and no downtime. Plus, with 24/7 support and remote troubleshooting, you can rest assured that Star is always there to help you should any issues arise. Star's Whole Home Wi-Fi also comes with the Command IQ mobile app, putting you in control of your home network and making it easy to set up and connect devices, run network speed tests, pause Wi-Fi, and set parental controls all from the palm of your hand. It's the ultimate Wi-Fi experience. Contact Star today to get started.
Just because something may work doesn't mean it's right for your business. Let Star Communications' knowledgeable consultants help you customize a hosted voice system that's right for you. Our dedicated experts work with you to understand your business needs and guide you at every step, from choosing and installing services to ongoing maintenance and support. Contact Star today.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're coming up on the last segment of a show we call We Should Know, and we're talking about education today. My name is JW Simmons, your host. Our guest is Dr. Jamie King. Dr. King, thank you for being with us. We tout this show as being an information education show. Imagine that. We both have backgrounds in that area. And the thing that strikes me with education today, and I have to ask this question before we go much further, because if I don't, people will be calling me, why didn't you ask this? Looking at the school system thus far, and you've had a very short time to do a lot of surveying and looking and talking to staff people. Do you feel the Sampson County schools are secure? Are they safe? We see all these horrific things happening in other places. Are you comfortable so far with what you see? And if not, what do you see that maybe we need to engage?
Yeah, great question. I think our schools are safe. Are they as safe as they could be? No. Could they be safer? Yes. Are we working towards that? Yes. We've upgraded and replaced card scanners, right? So all of our buildings have a safety vestibule, which are 2 locked doors that someone would have to get through. But we also know that doesn't prevent all safety issues, right? If we look at Tennessee, there were 2 locked doors, right? And so to me, safety goes beyond what we're doing. It's also about, when you see something, say something, right? Your gut is there for a reason. If something doesn't feel right, tell somebody, right? And that goes schools, community, neighborhood, house. If it doesn't feel right, say something. And so just that kind of see something, say something campaign with students that, if a student's not acting right, say something, right? Go to an adult and say something. If a staff member's not acting right, go to another adult, say something. If you're not feeling right, go to somebody and say something. And so I think school safety goes much beyond what we build. I think that's what we think of. That's the easy fix, right? Oh, we can put up another door. We can lock it, right? We can put up bulletproof glass, right? All those things are great and we need those. But more than that, we need conversations with kids, right? Conversations with adults. It's okay to say, I'm not feeling right today, right? I'm really struggling with this. Our students, I talk about our school discipline. Discipline, typically there's an underlying cause of that behavior. What we fix in education is what we see, right? It's the top level, but it's like an iceberg. There's so much below the surface of why that kid is behaving that way. And so I think we really have to work on, what is the underlying cause? What is the baggage that this student is bringing with them? What's the baggage that staff member is bringing with them, right? And what we can't do is say, check it at the door, right? I hear people say, well, check all your personal stuff at the door. Well, that's a great theory, but that's not how humans work, right? I carry my baggage with me everywhere I go. What we have to do is prepare and educate kids on how to put that baggage in a certain spot, right? How to be an 11th grade student and have all these things that are happening in the outside world, but how to close the door to those when you walk into a classroom, right? And I think that's where we fail to really prepare kids, is we tell them just check it at the door, right? Check your personal life at the door. And that's not possible, because as adults, we don't do that. But we tell students to do that all the time. So I think, safety, I think, yes, we are there. I think we have safe schools. Could they be safer? Yes. But I also would argue that safety goes much deeper than just the safety of the building. It's the safety of the people inside of the building. And what are the relationships they have, right? We know that most school shootings are prevented because someone saw something and said something, right? And so creating that culture where kids are okay with that, right? Kids say, hey, Jamie, you've said a lot of things today that are concerning. Can we walk to the counseling office together just so I can help you out as friends? But we in a society have become to where we're so scared to say that to someone, to say, hey, is everything okay? Can I help you? Can can I talk to you about this? Can I just be a listening ear? Because it takes all of us, and it takes all kids in a building, it takes all staff in a building working together and having those personal relationships to know, hey, Jamie's having a rough week. Let's pull Jamie aside and figure out what's going on. And I think that, although people say we got to get back to basics, and yes, I agree with that. We have to get back to the fundamentals of education. We also can't lose sight that we're people, and we're people for a reason. And I think when we only worry about the education and not mental aspects of people, then we forget about that. So we can't do that.
Well, let's talk a bit about that whole idea of where these values come from. Recently, a huge crowd turned out to social media post that some gamer put online, 20,000. I think he's got 20 million viewers, and Manhattan got just bombarded with folks, and it was a violent situation. Violent. And the mayor of New York, and I'm not quoting here, I'm paraphrasing, but basically put a media statement out and said, you do not get your values from social media. Are we depending more on social media platforms to derive who we are and determine our independence and how we act?
Yeah, I think for kids, we have to go back to the science of brain, right? And understanding that, and that gets really scientific, and I'm not going to go there today, right? But when you're connected 24/7, it's very different than how we all grew up, right? Like when we left school, we left everything, right? Like we left our friends there, we left our teacher. There was no communication, right? As I grew up, yes, we had a phone in the house, so you could call people, but it was still different, right? Like I talk about how we would meet up and go on a date, right? Like you had to plan for a date. You had to plan ahead of time, right? Because you had to figure out when's the movie, right? Like you had to do all these things ahead of time, where now everything is so connected, you don't have to think ahead. Right? Like kids text each other, hey, what are you doing this afternoon? Well, right when we left school, we had to know what someone was doing. Like there wasn't a way to get in contact with them afterwards. And so I think that we as a society haven't fully embraced that new era, that everything is instantaneous, that everything is a now, where we all had to work for it. Like you had to think ahead of time, ooh, Saturday's coming. What am I going to do this weekend? You couldn't wait till Saturday night at 8 p.m. or 6 p.m. to figure out what you were going to do, because you had to plan, right? You had to call, you had to make all these plans. And so I think it's just very different now in this kind of instant gratification world that all of our kids are growing up in, of one, how to help understand that, but two, also when to say enough is enough, right? So to putting limits on kids' time on social media, right? That's really important. And that's hard for me. I'm a tech person, right? I love technology. But kids also don't need to be on there all day long, right? At night when they're in their room and the door's closed, they don't need that social media, right? It's okay as parents to say no. And I think somewhere along the way, we as parents also have stepped back a little bit and given our responsibility of educating and raising children to social media and to neighbors and to community. And we need to take some of that back too.
And you've got a degree in this field, so I'll ask you, how important is athletics today in schools versus to athletics 10, 15, 20 years ago?
I'd say it's more important, right? And it's not the athletics as much, it's what you learn about teamwork. It's what you learn about persistence. It's what you learn about, hey, it's a Friday afternoon and everybody else is going home and they're planning to go to a party, but I got to stay and go to practice, right? I got to stay and get ready for the game. And so to me, athletics teaches kids so much more than, it's not about the sports, and most people will tell you that, right? It's not about the football, the baseball, the basketball. It's about how to work with other people who have different views, how to not always be the winner, right? Like participation trophies are great, but in life, you don't get a participation trophy, right? There are winners and losers. There are people who get the job and don't get the job, right? And I think athletics helps to prepare and educate kids for that world. And I think you got to work for it, right? Like being part of a team, you show up when you're tired, right? But you also learn that teamwork means on days where I'm tired, right? Samantha's not tired, and Samantha's going to have my back today, right? Samantha's going to pick up the fold of me, but then tomorrow Samantha's going to be tired, so I got to pick up the fold for her. And I think whether it's athletics, whether it's community organizations, whether it's clubs, activities, getting kids engaged is what's important, and having them to have not a higher calling, because that makes it sound very spiritual, but have this thing that's bigger than themselves that they are a part of, is really important to prepare kids for real world, because life's going to throw you curves and you got to be ready for it.
much better to be part of an athletic sport than to be part of a gang in the community.
Yeah, and most of the research on gangs say that kids join gangs because they want to be included, right? They want to feel a sense of belonging.
Absolutely.
Well, we did that, right? I would argue we as a society have pushed those kids into gangs because we didn't create an inclusive spot for that student. Now,
opportunity.
Right, we didn't provide that opportunity for that kid to have some type of group. And not every kid is in sports, and that's okay, but let's find those niches for kids, because if we don't help them find it, they're going to find it on their own. And what we know is that typically that's not going to end in a great way.
Kind of the last question from me is this idea of mental health counselors in schools. Should we have a counselor that has clinical credentials in behavioral health in schools today?
Yes, I think kids need it, staff needs it. I think it's figuring out, though, what do you cut? Right. So to add that, you can't just say you're going to add it. What do you take away? Because there's not an unlimited pot of money. And so I think that's where we struggle now is what's the trade-off, right? So we know kids and staff need some mental health supports, but what do we take away that now they don't have access to? And that's the draw, is how do you, right, with all the new things that you're adding, right, with technology, right? There's an amount of that, right? How do you pay for one-to-one technology? What are you taking away from? How do you pay for mental health counselors? What are you taking away from? And so I think that's more the conversation of how do you do it, and do it in the right way, and do it to where it's not a checkbox, but it's actually something that kids and staff feel the need for and benefit from.
Well, we kind of come to the point where we're going to be in closing here a minute. I want to just give you a minute or so here to just talk about anything that we've missed that you want to communicate to the folks out there that would be beneficial to you in moving forward.
Yeah, I just think, Sampson County Schools is amazing, and it's great. And I've visited all of our schools in the first month. I've met every single principal, all of our assistant principals, central office. People care about kids, and people want the best for kids. And so I would say to parents, I know there's choices out there. I know that you can choose where to send your kid to school if you so want to. But Sampson's really good, and I believe that what we're doing is what's right for kids, and I believe we're going to change outcomes for kids, and we're going to change outcomes for Sampson County, and that means a lot. And so I would just tell parents, trust us, do this with us, and let's just get ready for a great school year.
Well, I want to thank you for being with us, and thank you for choosing Sampson County and joining us here in this area. And as we talked off air, we're close proximity to Raleigh, North Carolina, Wilmington, and oftentimes we're touted as a key asset to that region. So thank you for being with us. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being with us today, and we look forward to having you again next week right here talking about issues and discussing things that impact your life each and every day. And as always, may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host JW Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.